just want to stuff like that. So my pronoun is kind of based on what this all is.
Everybody hear me okay? Yeah. Cool. Welcome everybody. We're going to settle in and we've got time for networking at the end as well. But I'm going to kick this off. Everybody wants to find a seat, grab some food, and we'll get rocking and rolling. Sound good? All right. Who's coming out for the first time for this meetup? Anybody here last time? It's only the second one, so it's okay. All right. One person that doesn't work with us who came back for the second time. That's a good time. Well, thanks everybody for coming out. My name is Andrew I. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Closed Loop AI here in Austin. We started this meetup just last month. We did it the last Tuesday of every month. Fourth Tuesday, maybe? Last Tuesday? Fourth Tuesday of every month. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why we created this meetup, who we're hoping shows up, and what the purpose of this is versus other AI meetups that you might be seeing around town. And then we've got two speakers tonight, myself and Mike, who's our VP of Eng at Closed Loop. We are looking for non-closed loop speakers. We've got some other folks lined up from around town. The founder and CEO of Anaconda is going to come out and give a talk. But anyone who's here who wants to show off your own workflows, what's working for you, what's not working for you, what problems you're running into, anything in the agentic software development world, come find myself, Maggie, or Jess. We'd love to have you as a speaker as well. Sound good? All right, very good. So just a couple quick slides for you guys. First is a link to the Luma. So if you're not already subscribed and you like what you see today, sign up, get on the mailing list so that you know about the next events that are coming up. Again, once a month. There's some schedule changes and venue changes through Capital Factory last minute, so you'll want to sign up and make sure that you're registered. Second is, if you like anything that we're talking about, you want to help us out, star us on GitHub, follow us on GitHub. Everything Closed Loop is doing in the agentic team-based software development space is free and open source, all available on GitHub, so if any of this looks interesting, go check it out. And then lastly, if you want to kick the tires and take it for a spin, you can sign up for a free account of our hosted version of all of our tools at closedloop.ai. So a little bit of guardrails and kind of 3 intro slides that I'll probably do the first 10 times that we do this until everybody's been here a bunch of times, is just to kind of frame up the conversations. The first is, the way our team looks at this is we're all here to learn. We've really been digging in on agentic kind of software development for the last year as a team. That's product managers, designers, as well as engineers. So we think we've learned a lot. We're happy to share that. But the only reason we're doing this is so that other people tell us what they're doing. So we are also here to learn. And I guess the second point is we're likely preaching to the choir, meaning if you showed up here, you're probably already AI pilled. You're already trying to do all this stuff. I'm not trying to convince anyone that AI is the future of software development. So I know 50% of what I'm going to tell you you've already heard, or you already know, but hopefully everybody walks away with at least one new tool, one new tip, one new thing to think about every time we come out. And then again, we are looking for speakers, so find myself, Maggie, or Jess, if you're interested in speaking next time. I always like to do this. Quick show of hands. How many folks in the room are software engineers? How many folks are product managers? Okay, we need more of you. The idea is like engineers always show up for this stuff. Founders will also show up for this stuff. The whole idea is we're trying to fill a gap for how do product managers, designers, and software engineers all work together, and where are those new handoff points? If we only get software engineers in the room, we're going to keep having an echo chamber of only software engineers. So software engineers, totally welcome. And if you're a product manager, tell your friends. If you're finding this useful, bring them. We want them particularly as speakers. We want product managers, we want designers. Any designers in the room? One designer? All right, great. And then founders. Awesome, cool. And just quick show of hands, kind of daily driver for agentic software development. How many folks are Claude Code? How many folks are Codex? Okay, that's pretty good coverage. And then, anybody still use a cursor regularly? A lot fewer than a year ago. How about Copilot? Anybody? Nope, that's usually. Okay, great. Anything else, like core day-to-day tool you're using like all day, every day? Anybody want to shout out?
Does it kind of be built in?
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool. In-house developed, are you kind of building that for other people as well, or you're building it?
Yeah, I'm going to build buttons.
Cool. Well, tell Maggie about it. We want to hear about that kind of thing. Come find her. Cool. All right, and then last question, just kind of tee up the room. How many folks feel like, there's a great quote that we led off with last time. It said, the top 5% of engineers are going 10 times faster than they were a year ago, but the average engineer is only going 20% faster than they were a year ago. The idea being that like a lot of people haven't figured this all out yet. How many folks feel like they're going at least 10 times faster than they were a year ago? Like half the room maybe? And how many folks feel like it's closer to like twice as fast as they were a year ago? Anybody? Yep. Yeah, cool. If you want to go 10 times faster than you went a year ago, start off really poor. Start off really bad. It's a lot easier to get 10 times better if you suck the next time. Cool. Well, that's helpful in just framing up the room for everybody. Lastly, who's this meetup for? As I mentioned, the focus for us is on full teams. So how do we write really great specs that result in better downstream code? Should we still be using Figma, or should we all move to Claude Design? Or does anybody like Pencil? We don't just want to have engineers in the room. And what are the handoff points between these different technologies to get better code out the door faster? That's really what we're after. So again, please bring those folks that are your friends from the design and product management categories. Some of the topics we're planning to cover: technical discussions. So fireside chats, we're going to bring in some other thought leaders, so if you'd like to be a part of that, let us know. Demonstrations, but everything we talk about is going to be about agentic software development. Not the latest research paper, not what's cool in AI, not AI news. Everything we're going to talk about is about how do you ship more code faster every time. Sound good? All right, that's it for the tee up. I'm going to kick it over to Mike for the first talk. We like to keep these interactive, so throw up a hand or interrupt us as we go, because we'll both get on a roll, and then I'll give the second talk. All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Andrew. This is the first time I've plugged in, so this is just all working. Perfect. All right, great. I'm also using Slide Beat for the first time. Super interesting to go on and check that out. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about some metrics. Hopefully everybody loves metrics. And what's beyond Dora. So for the past however many years, we have lived in the world of Dora metrics, and I'm here to introduce you to Torch. which is the new set of metrics that you need to be paying attention to for your agentic coding development cycle. And quick note, all of the data here is real data, good or bad. The data sources are closed loop platform, GitHub, Pensero, and Datadog. So that's what's feeding all the cool charts you'll see. So if you don't know Dora, deployment frequency, lead time to change, change failure rate, lead time to restore. These have been kind of tried and true sort of DevOps mantra for a number of years, and really given, I think, engineering teams empowered back for both feature delivery, but then how do you meter how fast you're going with feature delivery, with doing the things that really indicate the health of speed and reliability for a system, and the way engineers really care about, and are super indicative of all the research studies. You know, elite, high-performing teams are performing great at these metrics, so these are the ones that are kind of emergent. What it gave us is this ability to have a common language across teams. It's all about how good you're doing, right, in both a velocity, right, deployment frequency, lead time or change, but then also these control metrics, right, for quality of how quickly can you restore if it fails, and then also that change failure rate, right? So those two balances of you can only move as fast as you know something's broken or not. But it's not enough now. And so from agentic delivery, we really are seeing not just landing the code itself, but how are you building that system that is landing the code? And beyond that, it's not just about landing code now. You have implementation plans you can review and approve or decline. That implementation plan leads to code that either has bugs and defects in it or doesn't. And so there's more activities upstream more than ever, as well as new things that you're spending money on. So previously, that resourcing or spend was engineers' chronological time. Maybe some cloud compute costs, things like that. But really, in terms of introducing the inference costs with LLMs, you have a whole new dimension of how much this costs you for delivery. And so when we really look at now, like approaching dark factory, or you know, the software factory never sleeps, right? You know, when you have your CEO on Monday morning going, I wrote this last night while I was sleeping. What did everybody else write while they were sleeping as well? Like, post that right here, right? It's a whole new world in terms of how you're thinking about door metrics and what goes beyond that. And so if we look at, you know, super basic workflow here, right? It's no longer, hey, I got a JIRA ticket, and now the engineer owns delivering some code that's going to get delivered and either have a failure or a change rate, right? We've got a plan that maybe a peer's reviewing. You're approving that, you're executing that. Now, you've got which harness did you select? What model is performing good, bad, and different, right? And so you have additional actors in these agentic workflows, tools, skills that aren't just a single human in the loop from a execution standpoint. So you need to measure more than just you know, what contribution to the actual PR and the code that landed have to this full process. And so in the old world, right, you would grab some set of work, you would write some code, you review that code, you review other folks' code, you run some tests, you ship that. All those kind of fit into that Dora mental model, right? Now, you may write a spec, and that might be the last time you see it until it's either pass, fail, or merge into production. You might be approving an execution plan, right? And never actually read the code that lands in production, but still carry some responsibility into those changes that you approved. You're steering agents, making decisions on a daily basis of yes, yes always, no, right? How many times a day does everybody hit that on their computer? And so in terms of not just landing stories, then you're landing entire features, right? And so how do we measure these things from the same spirit as the Dora metrics, but for our new world? And so the gaps that Dora really can't see, right, because it's focused on that end piece and then into production piece of the pipeline, is who are the people, the agents, all their skills, the models, what context went into the review loops, burn, all of these things that are going into, at the end of the day, the quality of the code that's getting produced. And so all of these are signals, right? It's not that we drop Dora or forget it exists. It's that in addition to Dora, which tells you a lot about your development operations from a traditional terrestrial sense, we now have more that we can inspect from an agentic workflow standpoint for ACDC, which gives us even more visibility into things that we can improve and optimize. So introducing Torch. Torch stands for tokens, outcomes, reviews, cost, and health. And so across the dimensions here, you'll see that we're gathering additional insight and signal into things that are very analogous to what Dora was ultimately trying to capture in terms of Spirit. And so we're seeing what our bang for our buck is in both tokens and outcomes, associated with cost as well, from chronological cost or lead time. But then we're also looking at those review points, right? So as humans have an opportunity to influence the outcome, where are they approving it? Where are they getting code review feedback, positive or negative? And then ultimately, in terms of health, that very similar to change failure rate or lead time to repair, you're looking at, are we causing more errors, right? Are we putting out more features and more slop and causing more headaches for our users? Or are we actually delivering quality? And so in terms of how we calculate those metrics, I have some examples here on the right, just to keep it really concrete in terms of some of the numbers we're going to look at here. Certainly, a lot of these are things that we're exploring on a daily basis, and you can certainly adjust or tweak for your own team. Things like reviews, having whether someone reviewed an implementation plan or approved a PRD, influence whether that code ends up as a positive outcome, having that reflect ultimately on the scorecard for that as well. And so really at the end of the day, what we're trying to do with these new metrics is we're trying to answer two fundamental questions that are outside the range of Dora, which is one, in terms of the token spend and token burn, what is the ratio of that to value creation for the features we're delivering? And in terms of human participation that now we're electively introducing into the system, right? We're not arguing that agents can write code, right? It's whether they write good code or not is why we keep involving human beings. When we're choosing to involve humans now in participation, is that improving the outcomes we're getting or not? And so tokens, this starts a little skewed. So live data up until today. So looking through the week of May 20th, we're looking at just billable input and output tokens. And so this factors out in CAC tokens. And so looking at our team across the last 12 weeks or so, billable tokens per day, or what would be billable if we weren't doing this under subscriptions, increasing over time. This looks awesome. And in fact, last week, it looks like we blew the doors off delivery, right? Well, this only tells like one piece of the story, right? We definitely broke the tokens. And so once we get into it, you can go through and see, okay, how are our outcomes? So these are actually outcome velocity delivery points. And so I mentioned a company, data source Pansero, coming out of the gate. And so looking at the delivery points, these are effectively story points after the fact. They use an LLM to look at the complexity of the PRs that we're landing. Raising over time, amazing. And you can see last week as well, huge jump from the token burn, which is fantastic. And so we're seeing over time our trend, right, that we're delivering more and more points per week, which is super great and something you would want to see. In terms of reviews, this is super interesting and it's something I'm going to kind of double click into here. And so one of the signals that we use for implicit signaling around the quality of the code that the LLM produces is how many code review comments happen. So full disclosure, we also have automated code reviews. We don't go down and do those by human beings. And so an automated code review, right, is emphasizing actual defects, right? Unless it was a bot that was overtly positive that I wrote today, it's usually not going through and saying, hey, great job separating concerns here. You did awesome, right? Like all of the comments are things that they're finding. They're like, actually, this is what calls a sick term fault. Like you actually should try to fix this. And so by counting those on PRs and seeing how many commits, right? A commit doesn't happen because the code was good. It happens because you want to change something before you merge it. And so counting the number of commits then on those PRs, we're able to get a signal of the quality and the number of iterations it took to get that code into a good place. And so looking at the reviews and then how many are actually accepted, right? And so we can do sentiment analysis as well. So if you have a code review comment that says this will actually cause a sick term fault and the reply says, great catch, it's fixed now, positively, great defect, you probably fix it. If you say, actually, you're wrong, that's incorrect, we're not actually using this dead code, I'm going to delete it, right? That's like a negative. So being able to count those up and seeing that 93% or over 93% of our PR comments actually got fixed gives us high signal that those were high F score, right? So those were positively found defects in those PRs. And then we're trying to seek to get more of those and higher density over time, and then make sure that those reviews are finding defects before those defects get out into production. And so we'll talk about that in the health one real quick. After cost. So we talked about tokens burnt. We talked about points delivered. You might say, well, you can just do a ratio of those, you don't actually need a C, but that would make the word torch. And also, here, you can factor in that there's also a lead time to merge and other costs associated with this, right? In terms of trade-off costs, infrastructure costs, build time costs. And so this really gives you a catch-all to say a total cost equation, however you figure that out for your team, allows you to say, yes, the billable input, output tokens, delivery points, but also that lead time to merge, the switching costs, things like that you can factor in, and you can actually see over here, and in particularly, I'll explain this in a second, the lead cost actually spiking last week, and that we had that increased burn of tokens, and we did have a similar increase of delivery points. And so why do you guys think that is? That we had like more tokens burned than in terms of like relatively the delivery points? Yeah, go.
Repeat the question one more time.
Yes. So this cost, right? So the ratio of the increase of tokens we burned last week was not in direct correlation to the number of points we delivered in landed code. And so we landed less code than we burned more tokens.
Okay. So you're asking how to reduce that?
Yeah, well, how do you, just guesses on why do you think that was the case?
Or why?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Reasoning tokens?
Hmm?
Reasoning tokens?
Yep, reasoning tokens, that's a great one. That's a great one.
Anthropic changed their pricing.
Anthropic changed the pricing. That's a good one. Yeah, so this is token, just raw token burn, not the actual cost of token burn.
Okay.
So the real reason is that we were doing a lot of planning last week. And so we went through ideas, backlog, and triage, and we built out a ton of requirements documents that all use tokens to build out that documentation, but all that's work in progress and not delivered code. And so we built that up, spent the tokens, but it's not actually translated into landing code.
So you're tracking cost in terms of tokens, but not the dollar cost of those tokens?
Right, so for us, and this is interesting, when we're looking at tokens, we're looking at the token spend as a total number of costs. And then in terms of how we would afford that, so whether we would run that under subscriptions, whether we pick one model or another, we do that as like a sort of cost benefit analysis, given that we would have to, burn 250 million tokens a day or something like that. Great question.
Well, what are some methods or what are some ways you guys might be trying to optimize your outcomes for your token spend? Like, less tokens per outcome.
Oh, less tokens per outcome. That's a great question. Does anybody from Closed Loop have a good example of how we try to optimize for less token spend and greater output?
Context engineering.
Context engineering, that's a great one. Okay.
A code database that makes your code easier to search?
Code database, yep.
Are y'all using like embeddings to, align, decision trees with outcomes?
Yeah, so definitely something we've considered is on our roadmap. Some of the more pragmatic things that we've just done to cut token costs just in the last couple weeks. If anybody is not running RTK, Rust Token Killer, locally, I highly suggest it. Saving about 60% on text-based CLI tool token usage for me personally, which is pretty successful.
Anybody else using RTK yet?
It is awesome. I don't work at Closed Loop, and I'm here to tell you, it is great.
If you're doing this, go get RTK like right now.
Yeah.
If you just install it, and your token utilization goes down by 67%.
Yep. Yeah. Freebie here, decrease your token usage by 67% immediately. Just download RTK. I think it's 2 lines on the terminal. It'll be installed and configured for code extra quad or open code. Great one, Andrew. Super cool. So cost, you had some good questions there. Going back to the health piece, this is a great chart. I love this one near and dear. So health, this is straight out of Datadog, our defect logs. So defects versus total production logs. You can see this chart jump up. The week of April 29th, we did a whole lot of instrumentation and started firing off a lot of errors that were actually happening, which is amazing. And you can also see that going down. So you measure what you manage and you manage what you measure. So now that we have those errors firing, they're dramatically decreasing, and we're able to get that within reason. And so we're looking at this as well as a meter of, okay, are we shipping things that are catastrophically failing in production? Not. Very similar to door metrics, but also makes the word torch. Yes, go ahead, Alan.
How did you do that even during your week of planning?
We do a lot of stuff at the same time.
Okay. Fair enough.
So the planning, right? The planning this is a tongue-in-cheek answer. The real answer is the majority of that planning and build-out was in token spend, meaning I'm not doing anything Claude is or the model is. And so I'm handing it something like the change log for Claude code for the last 60 days and going, which features should we have? And it's building out everything we need in the backlog, and then it's also doing all the prioritization and triaging to deduplicate and then stack rank those. So we always usually have about 300 of the best next ideas that are always bubble sorting themselves. Good?
Yeah. My question is, have you guys tracked this against like revenues? Because more PRs are great, but when I'm building something at the end of the day, I need to make sure that these features are like meaningfully affecting my bottom line, especially if it's going to grow cost exponentially.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. We are pre-revenue, so it's easy to track that. So a big piece of this is that Torch is also blameless. And so a big piece of the Dora metrics themselves was really a cultural evolution that's blameless post-mortem and digging in and having the problem be the problem, not the individuals on the team that contributed the work that ultimately caused the scenario which resulted in the problem be the problem. And so really important here is if any of these metrics or any other metrics that you choose to track how you're doing AI start causing engineers to either hide or hoard their learnings, their developments, their teachings, the other things that they could use, what models they're using, their just AI use in general, like hit the brakes and back up. You need to do something different. We all lose together that way. And so in terms of blameless towards principles, really you want to think about measuring the team, measuring the company, measuring initiatives, right? Any of the individual double clicking you can do into these type of metrics, it's about coaching. And I say it's not ranked here, we certainly have a leaderboard, we can sort by any column that we have. But really it's about how are you making others around you faster and better, not necessarily the heroics. So rather the heroics are in making others around you better. And so like our fastest engineer has also made the tooling that has made every one of our engineers 10 times faster. And so really appreciate that. And when you look at it and you think about it in terms of token burn or delivery points or anything like that, these are systemic signals and opportunities for optimization, not individual like hire or fire indicators. And so yeah, team trends first, certainly workflow triage, right? What are we doing? Where are we using a 12-step multi-agentic workflow when we maybe could just use a simple built-in command? Where are we over-engineering things, under-engineering things? Where are there places we can use skills, where we're not? And then where are there opportunities and these sort of anomalies where heroics are hiding, right? Where there's individuals or people that are really finding some key gems that can help the entire team move faster that you just wouldn't know about unless we're looking at this stuff. And so then certainly the dashboard and kind of looking at these things across the board, you should be able to, as a leader, or certainly any ICs in the room, if you're taking these type of answers to your manager, I'm sure your performance review next will go flawlessly. Bring you up in your one-on-one. I don't know if we're really reviewing these plans and creating cleaner PRs. I think we need a better way to measure that. Or, how are we balancing token burn with our actual delivery? All these things are sort of questions in this new era we need to be asking ourselves that go beyond just how accurately and correctly is our pipeline delivering new software. And so these are some of the things that are indicative of teams in this new era, right? And so you're shifting engineers left, you're looking at implementation plans, you're looking at how you can parallelize work more safely, how are you increasing the concurrency of individual engineers, how are you tracking all this stuff? If you said, hey, what's the pie chart look like for my team of what models they used last month? Would you be able to look at that or understand it, or understand shifts or trends? And so then this goes into our Torch overall score, which is all calculated here. And so this is a very interesting trend, and the April 29th is a big reset because we had no errors and then some. And so you can see that line go from where it was progressively going up to a dramatic shift down, but then we're continuing to improve off of that reset, having that actual error rate there, which was not present before the April 29th date. So continuing to increase and improve, and then you can see in this last week, because we did a bunch of planning, to kind of shift down. And so excited to see, even from this research, I learned about that lead and lag indicator, which we'll be continuing to pay for as we measure this for ourselves. And excited to see that line jump as we get all the deliveries from all the great planning we did last week this week. And so final takeaways, Torch in this framework you can use as the new Dora. Certainly Dora from a DevOps perspective moved us very forward in both culture, process, and measurement in a positive way. And Torch is a new tool framework that we can use for AC/DC to move us even forward in the metrics we should care about and the health of the team delivery. That's it. If anybody else has any questions? Okay.
You mentioned delivery points.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something I've heard of before. You mentioned this estimated by an LLM. Could you just talk about that?
It sure is. So our delivery points, we use a company called Pensero AI, a company out of Barcelona, and what they do is they connect to Slack, Confluence, Jira, GitHub, Bitbucket, etc. And what they're able to do is, instead of you sitting around a room and doing planning poker for an hour and a half as a team, they essentially just let you land code and docs and tickets and Slack messages, and then they roll that all up. And so they pump that through an LLM and look at complexity points. You can adjust them if you want to, and you can tune them for your own company as well. So we found that super helpful in just like reducing that overhead entirely or eliminating it, but then also giving us that sort of relative standard baseline to go through and see things like average delivery, are we on roadmap, off roadmap, things like that. But also they have community data, so they have hundreds of other companies they work with that now we're able to look and see, you know, our engineers are badasses, but they're also all in the top 25 on the planet in terms of Pensera. And so that's really great to be able to see. You know, it's one thing to have a leaderboard with your 5 closest friends you're always building software with. It's very different if the 5 of you now get on a worldwide leaderboard and see where you are collectively. It becomes a lot more of a team effort.
Sounds cool.
Super cool.
Is that a question? Is Torch, is this like a thing you invented? Is this
Yes, this weekend.
cool?
Bad code.
Yeah, that was a big token spike actually. No, joking. Awesome.
Good branding. Good
So,
branding.
did you see the actual correlation between the score, what is that, the points versus the actual token function? Like, okay, if you're targeting the bigger points, you use the more tokens or vice versa?
Oh yeah, for sure. So in terms of, like, have we seen a correlation in our success and velocity anecdotally with like these numbers?
So for example, you have 10 different tasks, the small points, the larger points. So if the LLM predict the points well, then at the end of the day, you should see the nice correlation between the heavier task consumes more tokens, those kind of correlations.
Yes, Pensero in particular is very good at this, and we participate a lot in their product strategy and like product think tanks and things like that. And so they're even as good as if you go and merge a 2,000 line PR and then you revert that 2,000 line PR, it'll be negative points. And so like it's smart enough to know like hotspots and and all of those things. So if you merge code and then I immediately have a hot fix and change that code, those points will retroactively change as well. So it's pretty smart.
So in this workflow, have y'all considered using any kind of the newer like Java style architectures for context specification and nuance sorting to automate those tasks?
We have thought about context management.
And what are your thoughts on the Java architecture?
I am not familiar with them, so I'll say what.
Can you repeat the question?
My question?
Yeah.
Have y'all if y'all used any kind of the Java architecture on for
What
context?
architecture? Sorry, I'm talking
Java, JEPA,
Java architecture.
Joint Embedded Predictive Architecture. It's being developed by Jan LeCun, the same researcher who worked on CNNs and the modern day GPTs. These are directly papers out that are being absorbed right now. I just don't know if you're on it or not.
I don't think we've got any, have you guys?
It's basically about wall models as opposed to traditional.
Yeah, I've seen what John's been doing in world models. I haven't seen it applied to agentic development yet. Anybody using these architectures in?
We're attempting to.
Yeah, cool.
So, yeah.
Well, now you're not the only one. I'm going to take a look at it. Sounds good. Awesome. Well, appreciate it, everybody. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Thanks everybody for the interactivity. Let's keep the questions going and throw up a hand if you want to interrupt or just shout out. For those of you who weren't here last week, last month, which is almost everyone, one of the things Mike didn't talk about because it would have just been a recap of the last talk. Our own journey, I made a joke at the beginning about kind of how fast is everyone going? Do you think you're going 10 times faster? Our team is going 13 times faster than we were exactly 12 months ago, as scored by Pensero. So again, they're looking at story points after the fact. They're measuring us versus everyone else. We started off in the 30th percentile in their global population, on average across our team. We are now in the 99th percentile, 90th percentile or better for almost all of our engineers. And we have folks who have been the #1 overall engineer across their entire population within the last handful of months. So this has been a journey for us. We've learned a lot, but those are the kinds of results we're getting. And again, if you want to go 13 times faster, start really low. So the topic I wanted to talk about, Mike kind of hit on this a little bit, and there were some questions, but how many folks today are working in a company like less than 25 people? Okay, and so for those of you, are you all using Claude Code Max subscriptions? Are you on the $20 plan, $100 plan, $200 plan? $200 plan, got it. And who in the room is on usage-based pricing right now, using API-based pricing or usage-based pricing, not max accounts? Anybody? Yep. Welcome back. Anybody else? Yep. So not too many people. The economics are totally different for those of us who are on API-based pricing than they are for people who are on $200 subsidized max accounts. That's what I want to talk about a little bit today. Mike, I want to thank you as well. Mike developed a lot of this content. I'm going to speak to it because it's more on the business side of things. But the title of the talk is Last Call on the All-You-Can-Eat Buffet for these $200 Claude Code pricing models. So really, if you look at this, the fundamental assumptions that went into these $100 and $200 plans, at least on the surface, they were expecting to have one person sitting in front of a CLI or sitting in front of Claude Desktop, prompting one thing at a time and getting back responses, and then kind of iterating on that. And the core pricing model was really based on the idea of how many of those things can any one person handle at a given time. What we're seeing now with folks, anybody using GitHub Actions, and you've got your Claude Code, yep. So if you've been doing that, anybody doing multi-agent orchestration, so you've got your dev agent talking to your QA agent, yep. The more of that we all do, the more we're running up the electricity bill at Anthropic, as you all know. And that subsidy, that spread that they were willing to pay for, is where all of these kind of ratchets down on pricing are happening. So what we all saw, month after month was kind of, oh wait, that $200 subscription, it doesn't get you really unlimited. There's new rules that are applied every month. This is a little bit of our sample volume internally. So this is just the past week. So we had about 4 billion tokens. About 1 billion of those were in input, about 14 million in output. So we've been focusing a lot on context management and specifically putting in a lot of rich context into every request we make in the hopes that we would get back better results. Makes a lot of sense to do that when the tokens are free. So we're running up the bill. We're running up the electricity bill at Anthropic. A lot of that is being cashed, but our estimate right now is that we're spending, if we were to be doing this on API-based pricing, about $6,000 a week in API-based pricing. So, if you look at that on a monthly run rate, we're looking at about 24, 25K per month that we would be paying. Right now, we're paying for 10 Claude Max subscriptions. Not everybody's maxing those out, right? So we've got some folks who are above and beyond. We've done some of the hacky stuff that I'm sure some of you have done. We've got a shared account, and when somebody spikes theirs, then we've got a shared computer that you can roll over to. So everybody's doing this and finding all these hacks around. Right now, it's about $6 per session for us, what it would cost in any one of these given sessions, an incremental usage-based cost per session. Other things I wanted to highlight, again, our repository and context ingestion that we've been throwing at this has been material that's been very expensive from a pure token standpoint, but if they're not shutting us off, let's try and see if it works. So, everybody familiar with what's going to happen on June 15th?
Yeah.
Yep.
Who's worried about what's going to happen on June 15th?
Everybody.
Yeah. So, switch to Codex. And why can we switch to Codex? Because they're in second place right now. As soon as they get into first place, the unit economics end up the same.
Yep.
So what we're all looking at right now, so Claude Code agentic SDK usage had already started to move to usage-based pricing. That was also spurred by OpenClaw and other third-party agent harnesses. But now Claude-P commands and GitHub Actions are also moving to this tiered-based pricing. So if folks aren't familiar, what you're seeing on the left is the announcement from Claude. They're positioning this as like, hey, good news, these tokens no longer count against your usage, your max subscription. It's like, yeah, it's because you're billing me for them extra. Thank you. And oh, by the way, you get $200 in free credits. It's like, no.
One day free.
Yeah, exactly, not even, right? So this is what's changing. A little bit of the trend, and I think this is important because for us, we're looking at this more strategically, not just like, okay, what's the next hack that we can work around to max out these $200 plans? But the truth is, like, if you just look at the last few months, back in January, Anthropic came out and said, hey, our margins are 10% worse than we thought they were going to be. So their electricity bill is a lot higher than they were expecting for the usage that they're seeing. They started to limit folks. So that was what time of day can you use the agents, what time, how many tokens you're actually getting, et cetera. The next thing that happened was the agent tool carve out. So that started with OpenClaw, right? They're going to ban third parties from actually using their harness or using their models. But what's been interesting, I don't know if folks have been following kind of the enterprise response to this. So both Microsoft and Uber have come out this week and said that they're changing their Claude usage policies in response to this. So they're saying like, hey, in Microsoft's case, you got to be using Copilot, and as I'll get to here in a second, in Uber's case, just saying like, we're not sure that the juice is worth the squeeze at this cost, right? It was a no-brainer to everyone 3 months ago. Oh, tokens are cheaper than people. But when tokens are just used without any guidelines or any evaluation of the value you're getting for that token spend, all of a sudden, now they're starting to get scrutinized as we're seeing how big these bills can really be. And so June 15th is the big date, where if a lot of your workflows are based on these -P type workflows, or if you've got things running as GitHub Actions, now all of a sudden you're going to be paying more attention to, are you really getting value for those executions? Also, I don't know if folks have been following this, but so what if you're really great at token maxing, and somehow you've managed to cobble together a system that gets you all these results still for your $200 subscriptions, and you're flying under the radar. The answer is if you do that too well, you're going to get banned. And so there's been multiple cases now of companies who have just been shut down, 60-person company, 25-person company, just without warning, all of your cloud subscriptions are now shut off, and you've got to find a new way to deliver code. But if you'd like, you can pay for usage-based pricing effective immediately, right? But your bill is going to go up by 10x to 100x depending on how effective you were at token maxing. This was a great quote just yesterday from the COO at Uber saying it's very hard to draw a line between those stats, meaning token usage, right? If you just back up a month ago, what was the dashboard that everybody, Meta, every other company on the planet, what was everybody showing? How many tokens did you use? The more tokens you use, the better you were doing, right? But now what we're seeing is folks are already saying, hey, token usage, it's really difficult right now to draw a line from that token usage to delivered code, or to delivered value. I think there's a question earlier about, hey, how do you actually map this to features that matter? First, map token usage to features. That's a blind spot for almost everyone. And then if you can map token usage to features, then tell me which features we're actually engaged with, is kind of our worldview on this. But right now, this is a huge challenge for the industry as it's gone from like, this is so obviously cheap to, wait a second, this actually gets pretty expensive if Claude doesn't pay my electricity bill for me. So, the new thing that we're going after, and Mike has kind of alluded to this, what we're focusing on as a business is like, how can we actually estimate that value? This is the same thing everybody's always wanted. The fundamental ratio that everyone is looking for, what does everybody want? Get it to be better, faster, cheaper, right? We used to say pick two. Now it's get it to be better, faster, cheaper, but how am I trying to balance those constraints? The way we think about it is just, it's the value delivered divided by the cost paid. Now the question is what's going into that numerator and what's going into that denominator, right? It used to be the cost was largely human labor for software engineering. Now it's human labor plus tokens in the denominator. What's in the numerator? Value. That's the harder thing to quantify, right? But certainly merged code, that's a decent proxy, right? How many tokens am I spending? How much human labor am I spending for merged code? Probably a good starting point, but we've got to look at more than just merged code. So, we've got 4 thoughts on kind of how should you be thinking about your token cost, your overall costs, versus the benefit that you're seeing. And what are the new things that you need to instrument in order to have any sense of whether or not that incremental token spend, I mean, I look at this and think like, okay, so what is Uber saying now? Like, we're going to clamp down on token spend? Like, everybody spend as much as you can. Wait, no, everybody's metered, right? You really need to know, well, what if this guy is spending $1 billion, but he's getting $30 billion in value, and this guy's spending $1 billion, but he's getting negative value, right? And so really being able to attribute value to that token spend is the real key. So 4 pillars that we're going to talk about: cost management, some process changes that we're instrumenting ourselves. We're thinking a lot about multi-model strategy. So I saw most of the folks in the room were doing both Claude Code and Codex. Larger organizations are not doing that as often. The bigger you are, we had some folks come out for the first session from HEB, and the small companies are like, well, you should use every model under the sun. They're like, have you heard of change management? Have you heard of training? Like, you can't take 2,000 engineers and say, use everything under the sun, throw it all at this, don't worry about it. And so larger organizations are having to think through who are those vendors that they're actually going to work with, and do they bet on one horse, or do they have multiple vendors as a part of this, as a part of their cost control strategy? And then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about agentic ops and how you delegate workflows. So 4 quick things. This is a quick dashboard that we built into our own open source product. But the first thing that we were able to do is just actually track sessions from individual machines as well as cloud-based sessions. So who actually ran how many different Claude Code sessions? So we're parsing logs to get that from local machines as well as cloud-based compute. So how many sessions did we have? How many tokens did they burn, input and output, and what was the actual cost attributed to any of those sessions? We're also now breaking that down by model. So not looking at just what's the Claude dashboard give me or what does the Codex dashboard give me, but if I look across Claude and Codex and OpenCode, etc., what am I seeing in terms of the actual token spend across all of those different services? So the first piece of this is just being able to trace the bill. The second piece is being able to tie this back to deliverables. So if you start looking at those logs and you look at those sessions, if you can pull out of those logs, what was the actual ticket from which this came? What was the issue from which this session started? Now you've got an attribution of session to intent. And if you can see in that session a push, a PR, now you can see the landed code. So the vendors are actually giving us everything that we need in these logs to be able to tie what was the thing that I was trying to build, what were all the tokens used, what were all the terms of the conversation that happened, and ultimately, did I land code or didn't I? Right? All of that is available in these logs across all these different vendors. So one of the first things that we're doing now as a team is trying to figure out, how do I map all these sessions that were just blind and on engineers' laptops? How do I map those all back to my roadmap, to the things I said I wanted to build? Now we can start to get ratios, right? Hey, does this person's agent pack actually give us more value, a landed PR, for less tokens, right? But you can only do that if you can tie the sessions to both the input, what was I trying to build, and the output, did I land that code or not? So cost management, tying it back to deliverables. This is all part of kind of the first point, cost management. The second is process changes. So one of the things we're trying to figure out is when do we have a human in the loop, and when do we kind of assign a job out to an agent? So three kind of core workflows for us. Human does it. Hey, person is primarily doing this on their own, maybe AI assisted. Human steering the model. So hey, this is a big feature, and I want to have an interactive session to make sure that this is actually going down the path that I want, or the agent runs asynchronously. That might look like bugs or PR reviews. Yep.
Going back to engineering schooling, does anybody still write out their code before they type their code? Wouldn't that save time? And that way you could figure out, hey, I wrote this wrong, so that way you're saving time, you can just retype.
Does anybody write their code before
They actually type their code? Like, you learn that in school.
being like pseudocode kind of style?
Kinda, yeah. Like where you just write everything down before you actually type it.
Yeah, I would say for us, it's shifted from writing out code or an abstraction of the code to really like more human language. What are the bullet points I'm trying to get? What are the test criteria? There's a bunch of different tactics that we would take. I don't know if you or anybody else wants to weigh in on that, but I'd say like, no, we're definitely not taking an approach of like, write more code first. The code is, I would say now, 99 to 100% written by AI. The question is only the percent to which we are guiding that, whether that's a plan or an architecture document, etc. Anybody want to add to that from our team? I'm only writing half the code in the company. Kidding. Yep.
Yeah. Are you using or considered using like a hybrid of those models?
Yes. Great segue. So here's where we generally apply these different patterns. So a good example of kind of like human involvement and which of the pricing tiers are we using? So there's a question of like, is this a human plus AI? And if so, is there human oversight, or are we trying to put this out to like a GitHub action for something that's automated? So PRDs, so product requirements documents, and planning, so the implementation plans. We've taken implementation plans that are currently ephemeral. So you're in an interactive session with Claude Code. You say, hey, I want to build this feature, and it asks you a couple questions that maybe are technical implementation questions, but maybe they're product questions. So, what's the response time need to be on this API call? And you're like, I don't know, I'll make some shit up. Maybe that was a question you should have gone back to your product manager and said like, hey, is a 3 millisecond turnaround time fast enough? So the first thing that we're doing is taking PRDs, so requirements, as well as technical implementation plans, and making those collaborative documents and saving those implementation plans. But that's something that we're doing with humans and a subscription-based pricing through kind of iteration and interactivity and saving off those artifacts. An alternate example where we're just kind of assigning tasks out would be something like a repeated workflow or deterministic checks like scripts and CI actions, where we're just assigning those off to an agent and not necessarily having human in the loop for that repetitive work. And that is going to move towards API-based pricing, where we're going to be looking at, hey, are we getting the juice for the squeeze out of those individual interactions? So there's a number of different patterns here. Mike, I don't know if you want to add any other highlights in terms of the types of workloads that we're assigning out and where we're placing them as far as humans in the loop versus pure agentic coding.
Yeah, I would say in terms of the model experimentation, we're certainly delving into always considering like what is the latest emergent technology for the job. And so I think a couple slides back had like the model breakdown. You can see Big Pickle in there from OpenCode. So I've been running the last week and a half code reviews through OpenCode for free just to test it out. And so we're kind of always balancing that with thinking about like the premium models and where you're going to be eventually spending the top dollar. You want to make sure that you're, from an input and output standpoint, getting the best bang for your buck. So that's where you want to start orienting your human beings to do more of their interactive sessions, et cetera, deep thinking. And then some of the things that are more pedestrian tasks, like Andrew mentioned, maybe it's something like auto-sorting the backlog or going through and making sure all of the PR review comments you got are followed up on. Those are things that you can start shelving off to lower level models.
As I recall, the Big Pickle model is now max G7. So, like, you can get that from a ton of places. You don't want to get it from open code. You can get it for a ton of places for like less than 1/10 the cost of Sonic.
It's interesting as well. You might think that the big LLM vendors just want to run up the bill on you as much as they can, and so like, oh, you assign a task off to Opus that maybe you didn't have to use Opus, you could have gotten away with Sonnet, or you sign off a task to Opus and now it's delegating out to a bunch of sub-agents. I don't know what other folks' kind of anecdotal experience has been, but as I'm watching kind of the sub-agent calls in the logs and seeing, okay, I kicked off a big session with Opus, it spun up 4 different sub-agents to do code exploration. Those code exploration agents are often haiku, right? And if you think about it, that makes sense for them. Like what they're trying to do is make a margin on their own electricity bill. They don't want to send you too big a bill where you churn, right? So what they want to do is make their 40% or 50% margin on every call that you make. Now the question is, can you get it cheaper somewhere else? So maybe I don't have to use your haiku model. Maybe I can run my own inference model locally if I want to buy that Mac Mini. But until you instrument and you can actually tie intent to sessions to delivered value, you have no chance of doing anything other than anecdotally and kind of based on gut, making these decisions. So the big thing for us is instrumentation, and our assumption is that like we don't want to be boxed into any one vendor, right? We're trying to use multiple vendors so we can bake them off against each other. I like the fact that Codex is in second place, and so they're willing to give me a bigger subsidy today than Claude Code. But you can bet your ass, as soon as they've got 50% market share on development, they are also going to hit the same constraints. Nobody wants to pay somebody else's electricity bill. All right, so those are some process changes. Multimodal or multi-model delegation. So we just touched on this a little bit, but you can see the breakdown for us. We've got, GPT-5 has actually taken the lead for us recently in terms of overall volume in the last couple of weeks. That wasn't the case if you back up a month ago. You would have seen Claude at the top of the leaderboard here. But we are using we're using Codex, Claude, as Mike mentioned, he's experimenting with Big Pickle, and we've got Minimax on the board as well. For us right now, we don't need to be so cost conscious as to try to eke out every dollar. So for us, we're going to the 2 big vendors and seeing where are we getting the biggest bang for our buck between the 2 of them. And we're doing kind of anecdotal experimentation with some smaller jobs that are much more defined and saying, well, if we were to run this on our own hardware, if we were to run this on an open source model, could we still get the same quality? But instrumentation is the key before we can really make those decisions in an intelligent way. And then the last piece is this piece about agentic ops and workload placement. So in a world in which you're going to have human-based subscriptions, and you're going to have API and metered-based pricing. How do you decide which jobs to put where? And I can tell you, this is like as much a cultural question as it is a technical question. So we have folks on the team who their starting point is, I need to watch this thing. It will get it wrong if I don't oversee it. And so there's a lot of reviews, and for those folks, that is a cultural decision. Everyone is moving towards, particularly, we are a very AI-forward company, so the scale here of like our least trustworthy person to our most trustworthy person just giving big jobs to Claude is a pretty narrow band. But even within that band, the people who say, no, throw it all over to Claude, sometimes they get spaghetti code. The people who say, no, I'm going to observe everything, sometimes they hit the yes button too many times, right? But the point is, being thoughtful about where are you going to take those different shaped jobs and assign them. For us, I can tell you that we've done a lot more on plan reviews. So our experience has been, the more we invest in those implementation plans and being thoughtful about the review process and involving humans there, context engineering those, getting them right-sized so that the agents can actually land code, the more we've invested there, the less tokens we have to spend to actually get good code back, and the less we waste on spaghetti code. The other thing that's been interesting is, do you assign this to a local laptop or do you run it in the cloud? If you're running it in the cloud, generally speaking, you're going to be more towards API-based pricing. So now with these new constraints, all of a sudden having it's really interesting for us. We have a button that kicks off a multi-agent orchestration flow. That same flow for us internally can be executed by a person running / commands. If we hit the button in a UI, now we're on metered pricing. If we have a person on a laptop run / commands, now we're on unlimited subscriptions. Is it worth the $5? And these are the decisions you're having to make. So now you're getting additional oversight, right, through interactivity, and you're maybe getting a cost savings, but don't get too good at it because then you're just going to ratchet down the metered pricing again, right? All this is going to, my worldview, you can only really max out these $200 plans for like another year, right? And then this is all going to be usage-based pricing because we're all going to be hooked. So I guess the last thing that we put on the same board is which harness are we calling? So, are we calling Codex? Are we calling Claude Code? Which model within that harness are we calling? Being able to attribute that back to every session and being able to learn over time, hey, can we get away with a cheaper model? Can we get away with a different vendor? Hey, maybe the tier 2 model from Codex is doing a good enough job for us now. Maybe we can now offload that to a self-hosted model. All of these things require instrumentation first, but these are some of the levers that we're looking at. All right, a couple of just summary slides. So, I think I love this summary point from you, Mike. Making token spend explainable. Where did all the tokens go? Who used them? What did they use them for? What feature did I ship as a result of these tokens? And what model was I using? All of that explainability is really key to being able to tie that token burn to the deliverable and ultimately to the value that was created. The question isn't who's spending the tokens, right? It's interesting, as I talk to larger organizations right now, they're like, hey, nobody's really paying attention, but I'm spending a shit ton of money, and I know somebody's gonna come knock on my door next week. The first question is who's spending all the tokens? But the real question is, what contribution did I get to overall value for those tokens? And that is a complete blind spot for everyone. Love this summary as well. So we can think about tokens contributing to different possible value chains. So yes, delivered code is an obvious one. So what PRs did we land? Verification is another great example. So hey, am I preventing defects with the tokens that I'm spending? Or am I just kind of running in a circle? Is it worth it to do the level of defect detection that I'm actually looking at? Planning, hard to attribute, as Mike just pointed out in our own kind of metrics. We had this big spike in planning with no delivered value. Should we reshuffle our entire roadmap if it's that expensive? Well, for a broad subscription plan, sure, I'll run up their electricity bill as long as they'll let me. But as soon as that's metered pricing, now I've got to be a lot more judicious and a lot more intelligent about how I sort my own backlog and have that big expensive task. I think highlighted really well here is planning's entire purpose should be to reduce uncertainty, right? Which feature before which feature? Now that we've decided on which features, how are we going to implement those features? That planning exercise is all about giving us the right features delivered and the right features delivered inexpensively. If we invest enough in the implementation plan, can we reduce the cost to actually deliver? I won't dig into all these details because I want to let everybody kind of socialize a little bit. I did like this other point that was kind of highlighted here, which is guardrails, not handcuffs. One thing that we're seeing from larger organizations is this gut reaction to spend as much money as you can. No, wait, that was more money than I thought. Don't spend any money. And so the way that we're looking at this is high token burn can be problematic or it can be great. The big question is, and what we're trying to scrutinize is unattributed token burn. I ran a bunch of sessions and I can't tell you what they were for or what value was delivered. That is the new no-no, right? You've got to be able to attribute this all back to delivered value. So that's it. I think our worldview as of this month is, the winners are going to be those, not those that spent the most or spent the least. It's going to be the people who can actually attribute the costs, tokens, and human labor to either delivering code or learnings or leverage in how they build software. So, love this summary point. It's not about what the agent can do. The agent can do all of the above. The question is, how much do you have to spend to get there, and was it worth it? So that's it. I'm happy to take more questions. One other thing I did want to hit on, if folks like these types of topics, and you haven't been out yet, our friends at Hack AI have adjacent topics that are really great. I met some folks. Anybody show up from Hack AI? One. Anybody else? Yep, great. So if you're at Hack AI, or if you're here, go check out Hack AI. If you're at Hack AI, tell your friends to come check this out if it seems of interest. And these are the takeaways and CTAs for you guys. Questions? Helpful? Fire away.
Super helpful to answer that question you asked. You've talked a lot about measuring the token spend. You talked some about how to measure it. It's a question of human spend as well, right? Because if you're making me 13 times more expensive and I'm costing $2,500 a month, my CFO goes, "You're spending $2,500 a month. What the heck? You got to stop that."
Yep.
That's probably not very well.
Yeah, so I wrote the PRD on this week.
Okay.
It's not yet been implemented. But I'll tell you kind of philosophically how I'm thinking about it. The first step was, can we get any visibility at all to what engineers are doing? And the answer last year was no. You are not allowed to know what I'm doing at all, ever. Trust me, hire good people, you're not allowed to look at anything I'm doing. Meanwhile, salespeople, we were like, I get to read all your email, I get to see every message you ever send, give me your cell phone, I'm gonna look at your text messages, right? And so, in the engineering world, what we're now seeing is, hey, you're gonna run all these sessions, and we're saying, gosh, there's a lot of attributable knowledge in those sessions. Now, all of a sudden, the engineering process is becoming a lot more visible. In those logs, in those session logs, my starting point is not only can we see what the agent is doing, but we can see what the person is doing. And so we can get some estimate as to the human cost associated with a given session. How many turns did it require from the human? What was the sentiment analysis on those turns? Were you pissed off or were you happy? What was the commit stream, right? Did you have multiple commits because you kept finding problems? And so I think there are breadcrumbs that can help us estimate human involvement in a given session that become the building blocks to being able to really quantify and get away from just people's anecdotal responses. Like, this is spaghetti code, doesn't work. Which was the pushback 6 months ago. There's very few people saying that now. So that's kind of where we're looking first. But yeah, I love feedback. Does that scratch the itch at all? This is real-time feedback for me. You think that'll work? You think there's enough in what you said to Claude to be able to estimate how much time you spent?
There's a frightening amount of detail in what I said to Claude.
Yeah, me too.
I'm not sure how much I want my boss to see. So it'll be a really interesting. Every time you start measuring developer productivity, there are a bunch of really interesting trade-offs where you go back to, am I using the
I using the signal as an indicator for coaching, which is I think what you were saying earlier, or am I using it, am I doing something crazy like putting up a leaderboard on the, say, and here, get to the top of the leaderboard, which sales seems low. Not sure it creates this right sense of engineering.
The way that we looked at it from a dynamic discovery standpoint is it gives engineers the freedom to explore and develop and become emergent in capabilities and productivity independently, and then have that dynamic discovery of best of breed. And so we're able to discover and go, whoa, like, hold on, Scott, what are you using for code review, dude? Like, contribute that back up. This is awesome. Like, we were talking about what the sentiment is of the code reviews you've had and the F score of it. Like, everybody should be using that. Can we run that automatically, right? So using it for that dynamic discovery, and then also the other piece of it, I think it's a great differentiator. And like, you go and you say, yeah, totally, I spent $2,500 on tokens. Without me, you would have spent $5 grand on tokens 100 times, and you still wouldn't have working software. So like, my value add is like, you could go ask Quad out of the box to do this, and it would absolutely bring you back something. Like, I got this to you in less than a week for only $2,500, and here's how I did it, which I think is kind of the magic.
This makes me think about the legal implication of intellectual property ownership. Like, there's been some arguments that 100% generated code is not copyrightable, and that you can't, and so that therefore you need being able to measure the human involvement could be key to being able to own your own intellectual property.
Yeah, I actually just spoke with the IP attorney here on some of the emerging issues around this. I tell you, like, that's an interesting field. I think for those folks here, this is like the new version of the old should I get a patent argument, which, like, you know, it only matters if you win. You know what I mean? And so I think those things are going to play out for the big guys, but like the reality is nobody is going to not use agentic coding because they think, you know, be more defensible from an IP perspective. I think the traceability is interesting.
But I think being able to measure that there was human contribution in the work could give you some.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You have to have like a standard operating procedure that is intermittently measuring human interaction, whether through prompting or coaching, maybe with like a neural network.
My guess is like the legal implications are all just going to get tested.
Yeah. So I got a point of view, and it's going to look like something like this. Without you having human input into the artifact, it is not defensible. But if you wrote a file or metadata that corresponds to how you actually generated the code or tested it and so on, there is a case to be made. Why do we test it?
What if you own the source of generation?
What's that?
What if you're going to own the source of generation, create
No.
a key or a,
No.
why not?
That's the law right now.
The law?
Yeah, you can test it.
Is there a standard in place for what is the intermittent requirement of human involvement on that key?
You need to have had human input into having changed the text of the code in a substantial manner in order for you to be able to make the claim that you have any copyright. It's different from IP. It is different from any other claims you might have. This is purely talking about copyright.
Are you an attorney?
No.
I think there's an interesting dialogue going on. I'll throw this out there, and maybe folks can weigh in with their 2 cents on this as well. You know, my personal worldview is that there is no moat in software anymore. And so it doesn't matter what you have a copyright on. Andrew's worldview. It doesn't matter what you have a copyright on. It doesn't matter what you have a patent on, because there's no moat in software. My phrase is, software is cheap to build and free to copy. The only part that's slightly expensive is getting to product market fit. So you got to figure out what to build, but as soon as I figure out somebody's got the winning formula, making a copy of it is effectively free. And so, I think I'm expecting a massive shift to open source software and a renaissance of open source software, because it's going to be a race to the bottom. I think the days of 80% gross margins on software value are gone. Unless you have some defensible network effect or something.
Yeah, the network effects, I think, are the key. Like, you could make a clone of Facebook tomorrow,
You
but
could
you could get 100 million people.
Exactly. You could make a clone of Facebook. You could make a clone of CrowdStrike. But without having a sensor on every single person's machine, how do I see the new threats that are coming in? So, and this is playing out in the market, right? We're seeing stocks like CrowdStrike kick ass and stocks like Salesforce get their asses handed to them. Yep, sorry.
Oh, my God, like, kind of blank. I was gonna say, so does that mean you think that someone is gonna one day be able to, like, perfectly, vibe code something at scale, right? Like, you can vibe code a Facebook clone, but it's not gonna handle 100 million users until you, like, write a lot more infrastructure to scale that.
The short answer, like, this is unpopular in a room full of engineers, but my short answer is like, yes, ultimately, vibe code is the wrong term, but can you copy someone's software screen for screen? Can you build a machine that will copy anything? Yes, and it won't be worth it to do it. Why would I bother to make a copy of really great software when I can just pay $20 for really great software and not have to spend all the tokens? I think what you're going to see is the ability to extend software, to personalize it more than you could before. Hey, I need this one little extra thing, but why would I build this all from the ground up? And I think that because it's not about I can copy Salesforce, it's that HubSpot can copy Salesforce, and so the gap between their features is going to just decrease over time, and you're going to get the marketing cloud plus the sales cloud plus all those things that you used to pay individual licenses for. Again, just Andrew's view, you're going to get a lot more software for a lot less money because there's going to be so much downward price pressure on the cost to create software.
I think the quality bar will be much higher too.
I think that's right.
Can I respond to this question?
Yeah.
Like, brief. So, I think your question is really about, can you also code infrastructure? And the answer today is no. Not in a meaningful way.
Well, if you wanna, at pod scale, like in all the millions of edge cases, when someone sends some message that has some random escape character in SQL database, or there's just all these things that pop up. And I get the impression that, even if the method is like you said, that okay, I build this thing, it costs $100,000 in tokens, or $100 million in tokens. Is that not still low?
So again, like I'm talking super broad, just Andrew's opinion. I actually want to a point you just made. Like, was talking to the former CTO of Spinnaker, open source project that had some reasonable success, spun out from Netflix, and he made a really interesting point to me, which was, don't open source your tests. Is what he was highlighting was, it's hard to hide your features because screen by screen, anyone can come in and copy your forms and copy your workflow, and that's really easy to see. But your edge cases, what happens when I do this and this and this and this, and I've got a weird kind of back end, I've got a weird infrastructure, whatever it might be, that's captured in your tests. And his point was, don't open your tests because they actually hide, they are some of your defensibility. I thought that was pretty interesting. Far away.
Yeah. So, a couple of things I'll say about moats. Like they mentioned earlier, distribution is one moat. Another moat is for something like Stripe, for instance. You can't just clone Stripe without having to go through like all the financial policies that it takes to get to that point. You can't just clone a cybersecurity company without having to go through like certain rigors. Neither can you just clone maybe a biotech company without having to go through. So there are some things that will still exist as moats, but if it's just some sort of software that requires just some sort of network effect, I would say it's going to be hard to pretty much get that distribution going on. But yes, so yeah.
Well, hey, I want to give everybody a little bit of time to network and chat as well. So thanks everybody. If this was helpful, tell a friend, bring some more folks. We'd love to keep growing the community. Bring some product folks, bring some designers, bring a friend. And yeah, if you have other thoughts or feedback for us, come find me, come find Maggie, come find another closer from Closed Loop. We'd love your feedback. And please, somebody else get up here and take the microphone next time. Thanks all. Woo. not feel bad